Okay, so now we have lesson 4, part 2, and this is the final part of this lesson. And then we're going to go into some graphing after that, which is some fun. Lots of fun, actually. You can see some real world applications with modeling with graphs. Anyway, so here we already have gone over the three primary functions, sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, now we're going to go a step further and look at secant, cosecant, and cotangent. Now it says here that the other four functions, there's really only three other functions, but cotangent can be looked at two different ways. So let's take a look. Also, these are called reciprocal functions. So you can see secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So it's 1 divided by the cosine. The cosecant is 1 over the sine. So it's the reciprocal of sine. And remember, reciprocal just means you flip it upside down. The cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. But it's also, since the tangent is equal to the sine over the cosine can be looked at as the cosine over the sine. Okay, so really, you want to make sure you understand that these are reciprocal functions, and that's the easiest way of looking at these. All right, so if we come down here, we look at a triangle. Since the sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, the cosecant is the hypotenuse over the opposite. They are reciprocals of each other. Now notice that, and I say this for a reason, sine starts with a C, cosine starts with, sine starts with an S, cosine starts with a C, cosecant. So cosine starts with a C, secant starts with an S. So again, they're flipped, but also the letters are flipped as well. That'll just help you remember that the cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. The secant is the reciprocal of cosine. You won't see the same letter starting with the reciprocals. Okay, and then tangent and cotangent, those are easy to remember because you have that co. So they're co-functions as well as reciprocal functions. All right, so if we look here, the sine of this angle here, and that's supposed to be a theta. I don't know what happened there. But the sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So that would be 4 over 5. Well, since the cosecant is its reciprocal, it would be 5 over 4. The cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, so that would be 3/5. Remember, we're looking at this triangle over here. The secant is the reciprocal, so that would be 5/3. Just turn it upside down. The tangent is the opposite over the adjacent, so that would be 4/3. So the cotangent is the reciprocal, so that would be 3/4. Okay, so determine the value of each of the following in exact and simplest form. Okay, so we need the exact value. Otherwise, we could put this into our calculators. So we know that the cosecant is 1 over the sine. So if we wanted the exact value, we could just go ahead and put in the sine of 30 and see if it gives us an exact value. And in this case, it would. But assuming it doesn't, let's take it from there. So what we want to do is we want to make our special right triangle, right? So we have a 30, 60, 90. All right, well, the sine, I'm going to find what the sine is so I can get the reciprocal. The sine is the opposite side, right, in the unit circle. So that means this would be equal to, the sine would be equal to 1/2, which means the cosecant, that should be 30 degrees here, not theta. The cosecant of 30 degrees is going to be the reciprocal, which is 2 over 1, or just 2. All right. Now, if you put that in your calculator, 1 divided by the sine of 30, you will get 2. Remember, though, that you need to be in degree mode when you do this. Okay, so now the cotangent of 90 degrees. So the cotangent of 90, well, let's see. That's a quadrantal angle, so it doesn't have a reference angle, a reference triangle. So we're just going to go to 90 degrees and find out what that coordinate is. And that is 0, 1 on the unit circle, right? Remember, that's just going to be this circle here. So 0, 1 is the coordinate. The cotangent, remember, is equal to the cosine over the sine, because it's going to be equal to, the tangent is the sine over the cosine. Well, this is your cosine and this is your sine. So that's going to be equal to 0 divided by 1, which is just 0. So again, the cotangent of 90 is going to just be equal to 0. Now, if you were to put that in your calculator, 1 divided by the tangent of 90, you would get 0, again being in degree mode. So here we have 5 pi over 4, so this is in radians. So let's first convert this to degrees. Okay, and that's going to be 225 degrees. So if I go ahead and draw that out, 225 is in this quadrant, and that's going to be a 45, 45, 90. Okay, well, the secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So let's figure out what cosine is of 225, and then we can just flip it upside down. So the cosine is the opposite side. No, it's not. I lied. The cosine is the adjacent side. Okay, so that would be the x coordinate, or over here, that would be negative radical 2 over 2. Okay, so we're just going to flip it upside down to get the secant of 225. Flip it upside down, and you get negative 2 over radical 2. But we can't leave it that way, right? Because we need to make sure that we rationalize the denominator. So when we multiply that across, we get negative 2 radical 2 over 2. The 2's cancel out, so the final answer is negative square root 2. And these are the final answers here. All right, so let's go down a bit and look at this multiple choice question. All right, which of the following values is the cotangent undefined? Okay, so we know that the cotangent is equal to 1 over the tangent, but we also know that the cotangent is equal to the cosine divided by the sine. So in order for a fraction to be undefined, the denominator has to be equal to 0. If it's equal to 0, then it's undefined. So we're trying to find out, and it's easier to look at this one here, where is the sine equal to 0? Okay, so remember, the sine is the same as the y coordinate. Well, where is the y coordinate equal to 0? The y coordinate is equal to 0 on the x-axis, right? This point here is 1, 0, and this point here is negative 1, 0. So the sine is 0 in both of those instances. So 60 degrees is not a quadrantal angle at all. 90 degrees is not right, but 180 degrees, at 180 degrees, the sine will be equal to 0, which will make that undefined. Now here, number 4, you're not asked for the exact value, and to tell you the truth, you couldn't get the exact value because 115 won't give you a reference angle that is one of the special right triangles. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put in, since there's no cotangent on your calculator, none of these are on your calculator, you're going to put in 1 divided by the tangent of 115. Again, make sure you're in degree mode. And when you do that, you will come up with a negative 0.4663, etc. It's irrational. It says to round it to the nearest hundredth, so it would be negative 0.47. And that is what the cotangent of 115 is. Now, you could also have done the cosine of 115 divided by the sine of 115, and you would have gotten the same answer. All right, so there's a few practice problems, and then we are done with lesson 4.